Hello everybody and welcome to Nathan on Shuffle and to my latest episode of New Album Spotlight, the show where I put the spotlight on a new album in progressive rock that I've really been digging and want to point your attention towards if you're fans of the same type of music as me, and if you're watching these videos you probably are. So this album comes out this Friday and it's one I've really been enjoying. It's a band that I've really loved through the years. It's Pure Reason Revolution and their new album Coming Up to Consciousness. This was a band that was founded in London in the UK in 2003. They disbanded for a bit in 2011 after 3 records that they came out with at the time, and then they reformed and had a bit of a reunion with Eupnia in 2020, which is a really great album, and I've liked their albums since that point. Eupnia, Above Cirrus, which came out in 2022, and now this album. Seems like they're releasing an album about every 2 years, which I think is a good pace for a band to do. And I just really love their sound. It's unique and different in the prog space, I think. I mean, it draws from familiar influences, obviously, but it mixes them in such a fashion that gives them their own unique identity and sound. I really enjoy this, like, Pink Floyd aesthetic, you know, that are willing to go into these extended passages and really delve into these psychedelic lanes. But they have a darkness and a moodiness that maybe brings to mind bands like Tool or bands in a more modern metal fashion, Porcupine Tree, something along those lines. But it's never too over-the-top heavy. It's never too hit your head with this like extreme metal stuff. It's more just adding texture, adding layers, adding some edge that I think a lot of this music can need sometimes to not just float on by and be unmemorable. I think they have that edge to their sound. And another big hallmark of their sound is their vocals. They have this mixture of male and female vocals that is just really sublime, great harmonies that work together. You know, you spotlight the male vocalist at one point and then the female vocalist at another, and then they blend together and sing together in harmony. And it's just a beautiful mixture of vocals and almost to this like beautiful Beach Boys-esque harmonies and things like that. Adding layers of sound, adding this modern aesthetic, adding maybe a little bit of electronica and things like that into the mix as well. And it's just a really beautiful sound. I really appreciate what they do, and I think they just have some really great records that are well worth checking out. This album, the lineup, we have John Courtney, who's kind of the main man in charge here, doing vocals, guitar, keys, piano, programming. We've got Ravi Kesavaram on drums, Greg Jong on vocals, guitars, keys, and harmonica, and Anik Shearing on vocals, who's actually kind of a new talent into the group here. Usually the female vocals are done by Chloe Alper, who's been a really integral part of the group, but unfortunately she wasn't available to do a lot of their recent touring, so they had Shireen step into the mix here as kind of the stand-in vocalist. And since Anik Shireen is going to be the vocalist for the foreseeable future of some of their shows, while Chloe Alper remains very busy in her schedule, they're like, why not just have her on the record as well? And then that makes sense because we'll be performing these songs live with her in the live band. So it makes a lot of sense, and her vocals are absolutely incredible. I think it's a highlight of the record. The vocals are still stellar, as they always are with this band. I really love The Dark Third, which was their debut record in 2006, which really established this sound for them. A very sprawling record with a lot of really extended tracks and things. And then they had a little bit of a dip with Amor Vincent Omnia and then Hammer and Anvil, which, good records, very solid, but felt like it was a little bit of a stylistic change from what they were doing with The Dark Third that people had somewhat mixed opinions on. But they came in full force, as I mentioned, with Eupnia in 2020, reuniting the band, bringing back the sound that they were known for on The Dark Third, and have continued in that vein very much so up to this point. So it's a wonderful album, just with so many cool pieces to it. None of the tracks are very long. In fact, a lot of the tracks are very brief in their length, especially for a prog album, in fact. But I think they still manage to have a lot going on in these tracks. They really explore a lot of ground still, even in a shorter format. And what's interesting about how this album is structured is that there's these little interstitial, interludes that connect the tracks together, and these interludes are 20-30 seconds. They're very short, and it's just more of a bridge to get you from one track into the next one, and I kind of like that. I was a little annoyed at first that why do we have to have these tracks separately in the track listing, at least, like especially if you listen on like a digital version or whatever. It's kind of silly to have this like 20-second track. Why wasn't that just considered the first part of the next track or the last part of the prior track or whatever? But I think it works. I think it's kind of interesting to have these little bridges and to make this album feel a bit more cohesive as it moves along and connects from one track to the next. So it's really fun. And there's also interesting style interludes even within tracks as you move from one section into another one. So I think there's a lot of interesting bridges into other tracks, interesting ways that the instrumentals are linking into other things and how they're transitioning into different sounds throughout the record. And I think it's a really cool treat for audio listeners to pick out these cool little bridges and these connections and these transitions and how seamless they can be at times. And I just love this band's kind of groovy sound. They definitely lean on this Pink Floyd influence, like I mentioned, but with a little bit of a harder edge. I love the dreamy vibe and Pink Floyd groove of the opener, Dig Till You Die, at least the proper opener after the prelude track. There's still some hard-hitting moments here. There's some killer bass playing. They've really stepped it up in the bass department, I feel like, on this record. They have session musician Guy Pratt playing bass on 7 of the 8 tracks, who's bringing a really great style to the bass playing, and I think it's heard throughout the record. It's one of the prominent features that binds all these tracks together, and I just really appreciate it. And I just like that sound. I love good grooves. I love, getting into this pocket with the bass and drums, and they do that constantly. The Gallows is a track that has a super chill groove in the second half with even a jazz tinge to it. Bend the Earth has a killer bluesy guitar solo over some killer grooves and jazzy undertones. So you get this kind of groovy Pink Floyd sound as you morph and move through these landscapes. But of course they have those harder hitting moments that really bring home the sound and give you that drive that makes you excited for what's to come. And the dual vocals are a real treat, as I've mentioned. Both male and female vocals that weave their ways together throughout the record. Betrayal is a sublime showcase for these blends, and underneath it, this excellent walking bass line and sublime piano. It's just a really beautiful and mesmerizing sound, and those signature vocals of theirs are what really binds this all together. The Gallows has moments of almost like a Beatles-esque kind of harmony over some delightful repeating piano lines. You get some tasty vocal harmonies in the bouncy Bend the Earth track, and those harmony vocals that are in that sumptuous closer disappear. It's a bit lighter in feel, but it has these sublime moments that really make you stand up and take notice. It's a beautiful sound that I just continue to enjoy. And that's where the band thrives, is in this balance between this dreamy style with these really luscious harmonies, and then these hard-hitting, more darker sections with heavier guitars. Useless Animal begins with that more psychedelic style and emotive vocals, but then ends up with that hard-hitting Porcupine Tree-esque punch, and you even get some riffs and some organ work in the play. Worship starts with this plaintive guitar and vocals, but then by the end we're getting some hard-hitting grooves and intense style wall of sound. So those juxtapositions are fascinating, and like I mentioned with those interludes, it's really fascinating how they transition from these more psychedelic laid-back passages into these more hard-hitting riffs and these darker tinged tones. I think it's really well done, but it all remains very fluid, and it just continues along in this style. And it's very satisfying as a listener. And they even have moments where they're experimenting with different styles of sounds through here. You get this kind of interlude of atmospherics and harmonica in the middle of the Gallows. It's really interesting to hear that harmonica sound come into play, but it really works with the atmosphere surrounding it. You get a bit of a slide guitar, almost a country flavor, in the middle of the track Worship. Bend the Earth has lots of like glitchy electronica style sounds in the background. So they're able to play in different genres and different styles with different types of instruments. And it's not just your garden variety classic symphonic prog. They're doing modern touches to all their music. They're not afraid to dive into some modern styles and what's popular nowadays with those electronica beats and those types of things. But they keep it grounded in this Floydian groove with these great vocalists, with this little bit of hard-hitting, darker edge to give it that nice punch that you want out of music like this. I think it's just a perfect album. It's short. Every track is pretty concise and doesn't overstay its welcome. It just packs the punch it needs to and does the variety of things that they're trying to do. And then they move on and transition to something new. And I think it's a great style and well recommended. This is one of my favorite albums of the year. I really enjoyed this. I think it deserves a couple extra spins because at first maybe it'll pass by you and you won't grab hold of a lot of things. But I think as you listen more, you uncover kind of these hidden gems and these great moments, and it becomes like more addictive over time, especially if you enjoy all the things that I've been describing, those cool Floydian grooves, those great vocal harmonies, and those hard-hitting passages that are like classic metal-tinged Porcupine Tree and Steven Wilson stuff. So beautiful album. Go check it out. It comes out this Friday, and I think it's well worth your time and attention. So thank you guys for joining me. Hopefully you appreciate this review. Let me know in the comments, and I'll hopefully catch you guys in a future episode. Bye, everybody.